I have a confession to make. I have a love-hate relationship with romance books. Sometimes the premise sounds amazing, but the delivery not so much. Sometimes the delivery is really good, but the third act conflict is something I don't even want to get started with. The hopeless romantic in me, though, wants to be swept off her feet and live her happily ever after with these books. So from werewolves to lords and ladies, all the way to detectives, let us see how we do with reading romance books for an entire week. And we are starting out with The Fake Maid by Lana Ferguson, which I am already 62 pages into. I am absolutely loving this. It is an Omegaverse romance following two different doctors who agree to convene in a fake relationship in order to keep their boss and their grandparents off their backs respectively. They both work at the same hospital. One is an ER doctor, one is an interventional cardiologist, so they're very well respected on their field. Noah, our love interest, is an alpha, and our main character Mackenzie is an omega, and while she knows that he's an alpha, he doesn't know that she's an omega, so that's definitely going to pose a little difficulty or two later on when he finds out, which I am so excited to see how that develops. But so far, I'm having a good time. Definitely want to get a bit further into it before I give you a proper update, so let's get to reading, and I'll see you very, very soon for our first official update. Guess who has been reading The Fake Maid? A little hint, it's me. I've been enjoying a nice chai latte whilst I do so, but a girl made it 159 pages into The Fake Maid. I am about to start chapter 11. The chapters are quite lengthy. I think on average they're like 15 to 20 pages, which honestly is quite a bit for a romance book, but I'm having a really, really good time with this. Mackenzie, our main character, our ER doctor, even though she's been in the dating pool for a while and she, has had a lot of experience and she has dated around, she is very fearful of what her status as an Omega will basically do. A lot of people seek after her because of what she is, because they're hypersexualizing her and they basically view her as an object of desire and as somebody who is going to deliver an experience like no other, but they're not actually, meeting with her and going out on dates with her because they actually want to get to meet her and who she is as a person, but rather because of that aspect of her being. And so she's very reluctant to enter the dating pool again because of it, because she's had many, many bad experiences of people objectifying her very, very badly because of what she is. And so when this agreement between her and Noah, who is an alpha, which is, it's very funny that although she seems to be very hesitant to meet people, date people, even though she is initially very attracted to Noah, she isn't as kind of off-put by the idea of fake dating him. And that's probably because some sort of part of her being recognizes that that is probably her mate. None of those admissions have been made. I'm just assuming things out here that they are probably mates just because of the compatibility levels that we've been seeing. It was very curious to see her just be so willing from the get-go and he be very reciprocal of it. We see a lot of small little things about the way that they scent each other, the way that they behave around each other, the way that the other provides comfort and calm to the other in such small ways. How Noah specifically is the alpha, he can't go too long without seeing her or scenting her because it does kind of drive him a little bit crazy not to, just on an instinctual level. And I know this is very caveman. I know a lot of people are gonna say oh my god, Mel, why are you reading that? Because it's fucking hot, okay? I fucking love this. And so I am having a good time all around with The Fake Maid. And obviously the whole basis of this fake relationship is the fact that his boss found out that he's an alpha, and that's an issue because there's a lot of stigma about alphas' personalities and how they behave in the workplace and how there's a class clash of dominance with a lot of the other people, not him specifically, but other cases that people have observed where alphas just don't really mesh well in a group setting because they always want to be domineering. And so as soon as they find out that he is an alpha, immediately there's like a ruckus over it because they're like, an unmated alpha, Lord forbid, because you can't really control yourself, even though they're just making assumptions about him without really knowing him that way. And so that's his reasoning towards entering this agreement. I also love the shadow that my glasses are casting on my face. It's very hot if I do say so myself. That's his reasoning. And then Mackenzie is just the fact that her grandmother is being really, really intense. And the whole reason why Mackenzie wants nothing to do with alphas and mating and relationships is because her parents were so deeply in love with each other immediately after meeting each other because they were mates. And it seemed like that love was so blinding that it kind of took over all common sense at times. And it led to the tragic event in Mackenzie's life that did take place. And so she's kind of swearing off this whole thing because of that as well. And so I love that the character's motivations towards entering this, but also being kind of on the fence about it, are very clear. And I'm so curious to see where that's gonna go, because where we're at this point, it seems like the inhibitions are quite low. And we're giving in, which I love reading about, but I'm so curious to see how that's going to develop over time, because they're already saying it in the book, like it's only gonna get stronger with time. Instinctually, it's only gonna get worse from here. Gonna get real good, but like also real bad. And so I can't wait to keep on reading this. I love the fact that obviously she's like the golden retriever and he's the black cat and he's so grumpy, but as soon as he's with her, because she really calms him down, it's easier for him to show his real personality around her. And I think that's so cute. I love it so much. And they're just super kind of witty with each other. And I love that they're both doctors. So on an intellectual level, they're very on par with each other. It's just so good all around. I've never read a Lana Ferguson book in my life, but I may just have to read and get The Nanny, not in that order, but after this, because I'm so curious to see what else she's able to do. So far, this is a win. This is a win for sure. A little bit scared of third act conflicts as always, but let's hope it's a good one. Let's hope it's a good one. Hopefully she delivers. I have got updates. I have been reading this endlessly. I'm also sprinting with my patrons right now, also exporting a video. It's just a multitasking type of day. But let me tell you something. This book I am absolutely obsessed with. I'm about to sit down and finish this. I have exactly 100 pages left of the book. It's 360-ish pages, if I remember correctly. And I'm on page 264, about to start chapter 20. And Lana Ferguson, I hope this is not the last Omegaverse book you're putting out, because she has nailed everything that I typically like from a werewolf romance. The slight bit of possessiveness, but in a way that isn't overwhelming nor takes agency away from our main character, in a way that is very clearly exemplified, in a way that is for protection, for comfort, for aftercare, in order to take care of the person that you most care about, but it's not a thing that strips you of choice or of anything else. And so I really, really enjoy how she is developing all of that into the story. The Alpha Omega smut, she is absolutely doing right. I love seeing the little bits of the aftercare of it all and seeing Noah take care of Mackenzie. I just absolutely love it. It's just so well done in my opinion. And this is one of those interesting books where I feel like I would typically in any other scenario would be complaining, because the forefront of the story is very much their connection as Alpha and Omega and them trying to fight that instinct that comes up time and time again that they really don't understand, because this is the first experience they ever have with somebody of their kind, not a werewolf, but their respective ranks. And so they're continuously trying to fight this thing that they're feeling. You can tell that their very selves kind of gravitate towards each other. They need each other to a certain extent. And it's very much the focal point of the story, that their physical connection, their connection on a more, I guess, like animal level. It sounds like a weird thing to say, but like it is what it is. And they're not making like a deep, deep connection when it comes to understanding each each other's lives and past and backgrounds. We haven't heard a whole lot other than the surface level when it comes to these characters' pasts, and I don't mind it, surprisingly. But I think it's because you can tell that throughout hanging out together and attending to the other's needs, they're starting to get to know each other on a somewhat intimate level, despite not vocalizing a lot of those facts that I would consider very important for me to enjoy a romance book. And yet they seem to know each other so well in the way that they act, the way that they react, the little things like, hey, I brought you lunch because I just know you're gonna be busy all day and you're gonna forget to eat. It's so very domesticated in a way that kind of just happens naturally for people, but more so them because of who they are. And so surprisingly, I'm not minding the lack of facts other than the very basics. I didn't think I would be saying that, so I don't know what that says about me, but I'm enjoying this nonetheless. So going to sit down, going to finish it, going to update you guys by the end of it, and I'm very curious to see if there's going to be a third act conflict, what that's going to be. I predict it's going to be a happily ever after because I can't imagine it not being one, given that it's a standalone. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated. And Lana Ferguson, I beg, let this not be your last one, please. Welcome to Wednesday. We are officially on day 3, wrong finger count, day 3 of reading romance books for a week, and we have finished our first book, The Fake Mate by Lana Ferguson, and I am definitely giving this a 5-star. It was such a feel-good book, whilst including all of the elements of the Omegaverse that I really enjoy reading. It had one scene missing for me, just one, but I can't fault it for it because it definitely would have been, I think, very sudden just based on where our characters are at throughout the story and specifically towards the last third, but I definitely would have wanted it to be here and to exist in this plane. However, just not the scenario, just not the case for it. And so I'm glad that Lana Ferguson didn't do it because I do think it would have been slightly out of character if specifically Mackenzie would have agreed to something like that. And so I really enjoyed how it all wrapped up. I think it was really good. I love how badass Mackenzie and Noah become towards the end of the book, and it really is displaying how much stronger mates are or partners are when they are together and everything that they are able to do if they join forces. It does leave a question for me though, as far as the book's lore and the world building of whether mates are something that the universe kind of chooses for you or if it's more of like a biological response. That was the only thing that I didn't quite grasp as I was reading the book, because there were mentions of, oh, I don't believe in this whole like fated mates thing. Like, I don't think that is either for me or real, but it begs the question of, is it not real for you? Is it real in general? Is it something that people have put into question before? How exactly does that work? Because it doesn't leave it too clear, but honestly, qualms that are so small that I'm like, it doesn't affect the 5-star rating. So I think the first book for the video was absolutely phenomenal. And now I'm going to grab my bag and all my things to go out to my favorite coffee shop because I haven't had a date with myself in a while. I think it's been nearly 3 weeks, and so I am definitely down to take myself out today, treat myself to some breakfast, to a good chai latte, and to take my work with me, but also the next read of the video, and that is going to be Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I am very terrified of this book, mostly because I don't tend to read historical romances, Regency romances. It's very outside of my playing field when it comes to this specific genre, and so anytime I approach anything like this, I'm like deeply terrified, even though I have read a singular one in the past, and I gave that 5 stars. It was such a good book, and so I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out because I really love the Bridgerton show. Season 2 is my favorite. Obviously, my plan is to read this before season 3 comes out, and so even though this wasn't my first choice for the next book in the video, because there was another one that I wanted to read just a little bit more, I told myself if there is anything that needs to be read this week, it is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, because season 3 is coming out next week, and I definitely want to be ready for it when it does get here. And so we're going to be starting this today. I own all of them because I got the Illumicrate set, so I do own every single Bridgerton book, and yet I have not read a single one. Curious to see how this is going to play out for me. Let us hope that it is positive, and let's have a good time. friends, in the same exact spot as before we left. I brought a chai latte back with me. So good, as always. And we did read, this book is totally backwards and upwards and just all the things. I have been reading Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I got to page 40 before we returned home. Hi, Vinster. He wants to eat the camera, and we're not gonna eat the camera. But I got to page 40, and it's really wild to see the very tiny differences between the book and the show. So in the show, Penelope Featherington is nearing spinster status. She has been entered into the dating pool, into the ton for a while. She has entered the debutante stages, and she cannot yet find a husband. In the show, obviously, because it's such a short amount of time, it seems like these things are happening on a year-to-year basis, so consecutively. This is literally 10 years into the future. So Penelope is, if I am not mistaken, 27 or 28, whilst Colin is 33. So the age differences between this and the show are astounding to observe. And even beyond that, the fact that Portia in the show, Penelope's mother, is portrayed as, yes, a very snarky, witty person, somebody who is very calculated and who obviously wants the survival of her family on top of everything else. She is so mean to Penelope in the book. There's literally this whole scene with Eloise, one of Colin's sisters, as Eloise tells them that Violet Bridgerton, the matriarch, has a list of potential suitors for all of her single children. And she does so in the hopes that one of them will actually listen to the list and see all of the eligible bachelors and bachelorettes and potentially wed faster. But as part of that list, she also includes names of unsuitable candidates so as to really sell up the best candidate. Basically just to say, look how terrible this is in comparison to this other person. And Portia ups and says, oh, Penelope, maybe Mrs. Bridgerton should include you in the unsuitable list. Wouldn't that be so funny? I'm like, ma'am, hello? The fact alone that she continuously talks about how Penelope is never going to wed, she is very well into spinsterhood, and her whole purpose now is going to be to take care of Portia when she grows older, because she has already married off basically the rest of her children. She's only missing the youngest, and so she's just giving for certain that Penelope is never going to wed and she is going to spend the rest of her life with her mother. It's just absolutely crazy, and we don't see it to that extent in the show. Like, we know Portia is a little bit out of it and very over the top, but not like the books. Like, Portia in the books is truly something else. But overall, in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, we follow the story of Colin and Penelope, who are childhood friends, and Penelope has always had the most massive crush on Colin. It's not reciprocal though, and now that Colin has gone into his travels and into living his life in several different countries and really acquiring different life experiences and never really marrying, she is still hoping that when he comes back from those travels, she will fully see her for everything that she is, and that they will fall in love, have babies, get married, do all the things. And it's seemingly swinging that way. It seems like now that he's back, he's definitely looking at her a little bit differently. He's like, oh, was she this attractive before I left? Because she's kind of cute and I really like her personality, and I didn't remember her being this funny. And so he's starting to notice like these subtle things about her and her personality that maybe he didn't before. And it's just about their love stories, people who have known each other for a really long time and who have seemingly been in a bout of unrequited love for a really long time. So I'm really excited to see how this goes. I'm pleasantly surprised to see that this is not so different from the TV show in terms of the way that the characters interact with each other, the way that the dialogue takes place, the way that the descriptions also take place, the lady whistle down bit. So I think because tonally it's not so different from the show, I'm not finding it as difficult to read. And so I will continue reading. I've got sprints with my patrons, so that will surely keep me entertained and reading for the rest of the afternoon with a nice little drink. So I'm thinking we can just go to the office, enjoy a nice bout of reading, and I'll keep you guys updated as we get this thing done. And hopefully maybe today we can get even halfway through, if not a little bit over halfway through this book. I think that could be nice. reading Romancing Mr. Bridgerton? If your answer was me, you'd be correct. Hello, friends. So today is Thursday. So we are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't know why I had to count them. We're 4 days into our reading romance books for a week experiment. And I'm about to sit down and actually finish Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is actually a great time. I am quite surprised at how different it seems like season 3 is going to play out from this book. There are many different things, from Penelope's relationship with Eloise, which in the show is quite tense at the moment, whereas in the book it seems to be just a lot more chill. They're carrying out the party in peace, which are definitely not in the show. And then on top of that, I know an element in the show is that Colin is going to teach Penelope how to flirt so that she can ensnare a few men potentially. In the books, it's not like that at all. There is like a rival candidate for Penelope's affections. Definitely doesn't exist in the book. And then on top of that, I think the biggest glaring difference is the fact that we find out who Lady Whistledown is at the end of season 1. We don't find out until Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is book 4. And this book takes place obviously 10 years into the future, whereas in the show things happen consecutively. This is honestly one of those cases where I find it so fascinating in terms of like what they're doing with the differences, because even down to the characters, the book is playing out in a way that the characters come across as very bland sometimes, not in every instance, but there are definitely moments where I wish the characters would maybe have a little bit more tension, the chemistry would be more felt. But overall, I think for what it is and for when it was published, I think it's a really good Regency romance. I really love the bits of Colin slowly but surely realizing like, oh, has Penelope always been this attractive? There's this entire scene when he walks into a ball and Penelope is sitting with Lady Danbury and he literally looks at her and he goes, why is she not dancing? How does any man dare not ask her to dance? If I would have been here, I would have asked her to dance. And so it's those slow but sure realizations that he makes throughout the book that are so good, with him going, has this always been here? Like, has this always been right in front of me and I just never noticed? And so I think all of those tidbits in the book are so very good and I'm really, really enjoying that. I'm really enjoying the fact that Penelope has a very strong backbone. She will stand up to Colin if need be. She will stand up to Lady Danbury, which if you've read the books, you know how difficult it is to kind of talk very straightforwardly with her because she's a very strong presence. And so I love that she's not afraid to speak her mind, speak her truth, and to put people in their place when they need that to be done. And so I really love Penelope as a main character. I think she is phenomenal. I think now I'm getting to the point where the book is kind of starting to dull down because it kind of brings up the question of what's going to happen next when so much of the important stuff has already happened. So we'll see. I still have 142 pages left if I'm not mistaken. So I'll just sit down, keep reading, potentially finish this today. I think that would be lovely so that we can start a new book tomorrow and embark on a new journey. But it's been an enjoyable ride. I just kind of wish it was more similar to Tessa Dare, because Tessa Dare's characters are very bantery and very witty in ways that these kind of are, but maybe not to the same extent. But either way, it's a good time, so I can't complain too much. I think as far as historical romances go, it's as accessible as it gets, so not too bad. Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, and I actually really liked it. I think I'm gonna give it a 3-star. It's definitely slightly above average, but kind of down the middle, at least for me. People were definitely wrong with saying I was going to absolutely hate this, because I by no means did. I thought this was a lot of fun. I think as far as historical romances go, it was very accessible. I think even the lingo, although you can tell it's obviously set in the 1800s, I don't think it made it more difficult for me to read. I have a lot of difficulty sometimes reading that specific tone to things, and so I'm always scared with historical romances, Regency romances, because I never really know which way it's going to bat. But I think this was super accessible. It was really easy to read. It was really entertaining all throughout. I really liked the last third of the book. I actually found it quite entertaining and dramatic. I think the resolution for everything was so simple that the lead up to it, which was so blown up and so dramatic, felt basically unnecessary and null to me by the time that we got to the very, very end of the book. But I think it really worked, from the romance to the chemistry between the characters. I do fear in the show what they are doing with Penelope being courted by somebody else, because I am afraid of it becoming a case of, will Colin realize that he loves Penelope in the show because she is being courted by somebody else, and then that will make him desire her more, and it's gonna be one of those I didn't realize how pretty you were until somebody else wanted you plot lines, or if it's going to be more along the lines of I realized what I had in front of me all along, very much like the book. And you can tell slowly but surely how Colin becomes very much more adoring, and how he slowly realizes everything that Penelope is, because there are obviously many areas of her personality that he has yet to observe. Because I also think the show does a very good job at making it seem like Penelope and Colin are really, really, really good friends, whereas in the book it's clear that they are friends by proxy, and it's mostly because she is friends with Eloise that she has talked to. I love that Syl just jumped onto the table, so camera angle probably shifted a bit, but it definitely here happens by proxy, and so it's more that because she is friends with Eloise, then she ends up talking to Colin, and it's not like the show where you can tell that they are friends. It is mentioned that they are friends. Here it's more the we are friendly, and now we are friends, and now we kind of like each other, and now it's mutual for real, and now let's get together for real. And so I do fear that scenario in the show with how they're going about it, but we'll see when we get there. I honestly am grateful that I read this before watching the new season when it does come out, because I think it's gonna be an interesting one to dissect for realsies. So it was a good time. I think things that I didn't enjoy was the fact that, one, Colin's temper in this book was a lot. I love that Vin is about to jump. I'm literally holding on to the camera. She's coming. There we go. Yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. And she's gonna jump again, so I shall I shall hold it till then too. What was I even saying? Yeah, his temper in this book was awful. Like, he gets really angry at the most ridiculous things sometimes, and a lot of it stems from jealousy as well, which I didn't love at all. It also adheres to a lot of the heteronormative like relationship rules, and that was a little bit infuriating, because the other cases, there we go, the other cases I have experienced of historical romances tend to kind of unglue themselves from that, and so it was a little bit frustrating to step into the stop wife, I shall talk. I'm like, whoa, what? And not only was it displayed with Simon, but also with Colin, and it didn't note that it was on a joke level. And so I was like, if we're saying this for real, don't love that, because the whole point of having romance books like this is sort of, to an extent, the suspend of disbelief that we need to do as readers to understand that these things didn't work that way, but they do in fiction. And so I was kind of missing some of that, because it's kind of cut and dry in that sense. And then there were several instances in which Penelope and Colin are kissing, initiated by Colin, and then she goes stop because she's overwhelmed. She like doesn't understand what's happening. She's never been kissed before. She's never done anything remotely like physically intimate, so this is all very new to her, and she tells him stop, and it takes her saying stop 4 times before he actually does, and he tries to convince her that it's okay, and you can tell she's uncomfortable. That in turn made me uncomfortable as I was reading the book. That was definitely not something that I enjoyed, and so I do think as a setup to the more physically intimate scenes, I really do think it kind of ruined them for me for the most part, because Penelope was sort of reluctant at first, and it almost seemed like he had to convince her to do stuff, sometimes, not on every scene, and so that was a little bit frustrating as well as part of the journey. And it's funny because I thought Colin was going to be like my absolute favorite, and there are again bits and pieces of like his adoration as the book goes along that you can note that you're like, oh my god, that's so cute, but I also, as a counterpart for that, like I really kind of dislike Colin in the book at the same time. So it was a frustrating journey, but that very last scene when they're at the party and Colin is enlisting Anthony and Simon's help, if you have read the book then you know, and then Lady Danbury gives her cane to somebody else and she starts clapping. Under no context it makes no sense, but if you've read the book, that honestly made me tear up. You saw it in the B-roll. That was probably the most like emotion I felt during a scene in the entire book, and it was literally right at the end. So it was a little bit of a frustrating journey because I was expecting maybe just a little bit more, because I do find that the show navigates a lot of the personalities for the characters and that banter and that witty nature to them a lot better, and it seems like the characters over there aren't so bland as they are in the book. In the book, no seasoning, baby, none at all. And so I think to be expected, but I was expecting maybe just a little bit more. I have read the Whites under this context before, and it wasn't so unseasoned. And so it was, listen, it was a little bit bland, but it is what it is. It was a 3-star. It was okay. So that said, tomorrow we'll move on to a new book. I rarely finish a book and start a new one the same day. I think I've talked about this before because I like to give myself time to simmer and then start a new one. So tomorrow we'll start a new book. I don't know what that's going to be. I'm leaning Indigo Ridge. Let's go to the office. Let's go see some options. Why don't we? Let's go. Love that I'm dragging myself on the chair over here. Hi, welcome to the office. So welcome to the office after dark. This is like really bright out here, and then there's like barely any overhead lighting. I hate the fact that this and my bedroom's lighting is yellow. I really need to get light bulbs to change that fact because yellow overhead lighting is the worst. I know a lot of people are like, oh my god, it doesn't fatigue my eyes nearly as much. I'm like, girl, it kills my eyes. So it's bad. I need to switch those light bulbs for the sake of my own sanity. But putting in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton right there turned around as one of my already finished books. Gotta love the car passing by at this time of day so loudly. Oh my god. So we have got 2 options right here. Actually, we've got 3. One is just not on my TBR. Please hold. So we have got 3 options for our next book. So we have got Butcher and Blackbird. This is the Le Fantasma Patreon pick for May and June. I don't know if I want to start this one right away though, because we had agreed, Liv and I, to set this aside for our sprint so that we could start it together, read it on sprint. I think that could be a lot of fun. So even though I would like to start this in this video, I'm like, maybe I should just set it aside for that live show. So I don't know about this one quite yet. So this one's not so much a priority, I think, in the grand scheme of everything else I want to be reading right now. However, Indigo Ridge, I think, is the main contender for me to start tomorrow. I also have Addicted for now, which is the Addicted series book number 3. I am buddy reading all of these with Kristen. Kristen's already started this one. She's 195 pages into it. I haven't even started it. Completely forgot to put it in my TBR. And so that is also an option, but I really do think I'm leaning towards Indigo Ridge because it's in my TBR. I really do want to read this. I want to see what is this series called again? I forget what the series is called. I want to say the Juniper Hill series, but I feel like that is wrong. And so I don't know. Oh, the Eden series. There we go. I do know things sometimes. I feel like this is the one calling my name. I feel like this could be a good one. Let's read the first line. I don't think I've looked at the first line yet, have I? Let's see. Oh, could I get another? The bartender didn't slow as he passed by. Drink, I muttered, slumping forward. Why are we drinking? Pops had told me that this bar was where the locals hung out. Not only was it within walking distance of my new house, in case I decided not to drive, but I was a local now. As of today, I lived in Quincy, Montana. Listen, I think this is going to be our contender. I mean, it is what we're gonna start tomorrow, and hopefully it'll bode well. Hopefully it'll become a new favorite, or at the very least we'll like it. That's all I hope for. So I think this will be our choice, and we'll talk tomorrow morning and see at what point of the day I'm actually going to read this, because I've got some editing to get done tomorrow, but I think this is our next step. am 144 pages into it. I'm about to start chapter 11 and it's going really, really good so far. So the plot establishes our main character, Winslow Covington, returning to Quincy, Montana for the first time in a while. After her parents' passing and a bunch of relationship troubles, she decides it is time to go back to her hometown. Her grandfather, who is the mayor of said town, has offered her the job of chief of police. And so as she gets there, she is warned that she actually needs to get in the good graces of the Eden family, which is the founding family for said town. And she does so very well, unbeknownst to her, because on her very first night there, she ends up having a one-night stand with Griffin, who she thinks is just a passerby, a tourist, somebody who just doesn't live in Quincy, Montana at all, only to find out that he is one of the Edens and he is the oldest son, the one who runs the entire town alongside basically his dad. And he is very displeased at the fact that he has slept with her because he doesn't tend to sleep around with locals. And this becomes a bigger issue once they find a dead girl in his property, and now she has to investigate said case, and he can't really manage to stay away from her. And so they end up kind of working on this thing together somewhat, whilst figuring out exactly what this connection between the two of them is. Winslow wants something very casual. She just wants it for the shits and giggles. She doesn't really want anything serious with him, and so does he to an extent. Yet it's made very clear in the story that if it were up to them at this point in time, 144 pages in, they would rather have a relationship than not, because they can't get each other off each other's brains. And there is loads of things going down specifically in Wynn's POV, because she is not very well received in the town now that she's here. Not only is one of the local newspapers and their writer writing really awful things about Wynn, but also at the actual police station, they don't want her there. They're not very reciprocal in her niceties. They don't really want to talk to her. They don't want to do more than they need to in terms of the harmony of the office. They don't even want to work with her in cases, and they feel like she is too meddlesome for what they are used to. But she quickly realizes after she gets to this town that the way that the police department has been carrying themselves in closing cases and filing things, it's very vague and very much the bare minimum. And so even with the things that she has got to work with for this specific case, there is not nearly enough information as there should be for her to truly make sense and figure out what happened to Lily Green. Because although it appears to be a suicide, she thinks that it is not, because the number of cases and the percentages of suicide rates that have happened don't really match up with what is typically studied. And so not only because it's a small town does it seem strange, but it also seems strange because it's primarily women and they all are kind of dying in the same way in the same place, so it seems more methodical than not. And so there is loads of things going on in that front, so it is very much a crime suspense romance, and I don't think I've ever read a book like this. It's definitely something that I can get used to though. Like, it's fun. It's fun to see our main character go about investigating people and asking questions and doing things that to a lot of people is very uncomfortable, just because it's not the way that the previous chief of police handled everything. And so to see her come in with such a force to this town to really do things in the right way, to modernize the station, to modernize the way that the procedures go about, I am really enjoying that aspect of the book, which is a little bit surprising, again, because I've never read anything like this. I think what the book lacks for me so far, but it's not necessarily hindering my reading experience in any way because I'm still having fun, but what I find the book is missing is more development on the Wynn Griffin situation, because although they have slept with each other many times throughout the course of the last 144 pages, there has been no smut so far, which I appreciate, because if there were any smut, I would personally not like it because I feel like it's too early to read any of that. But the fact alone that they've slept with each other so many times, they can't seem to stay away from each other. They kind of claim several times that if they, you know, would be able to strike up a relationship, it wouldn't be like the worst thing to ever happen, even though it's not a priority. These two people don't know each other nearly as much as they should in order to, I think, make the moves that they are making sometimes, or the statements that they're vocalizing. And so I wish there was more of them hanging out, getting to know each other, and spending like some sort of quality time that doesn't involve him shaming her for not being a local or being, well, new to town, or her investigating the case and him tagging along. Like, I wish there was something else bonding wise, even just outside of the mentions of them sleeping together, that allowed me to understand why this connection is seemingly as strong at this point as it is. It's the one thing that this book is lacking, because everything else, again, is working for me. I think it's fun. I have got no idea where this case is going to pan out, who the killer is going to be, where the reveals are going to come in, if there's going to be any plot twists. I've got no idea, because so far it's just been like introducing the very basis of the case and the information. And so I'm curious to see where it's going to pan out down the line. I think it's going to be very curious to see the end result and to see also how their connection develops over time. It's funny because the book is branded as an enemies to lovers, and it's very much not that. I think we need to have a big conversation on how everything these days is branded as an enemies to lovers trope because it's going to sell, but it's not enemies to lovers. There is nothing about their nature that makes them enemies. Just because he's very standoffish because she is not local doesn't mean that they're enemies. Enemies don't sleep with each other this way or talk about each other this way or are as tenderly obsessed with each other as these two are. And so it is a little bit ridiculous that this is branded as enemies to lovers because nothing of that kind is a part of this book. So if you see enemies to lovers anywhere, which the back of the book does say, don't be fooled. It's not. But it's still good. Nothing much really has happened, but we still have a long way to go. I finished Indigo Ridge, and today is the last day of the vlog. I didn't mention that earlier, but today is Sunday. We started the experiment on Monday, so technically today is the culmination of our reading romance books for a week, and I indeed managed to finish Indigo Ridge, which is very fun. So I am going for a 3-star. I thought it would end up being rated higher, but I do have like some things that I just didn't necessarily love in my read. I will say the twist towards the end was really good, and it was a really clever way to twist it all in a way that wasn't so obvious and in the way that actually makes sense. And so I really enjoyed the reveal and everything regarding all of these girls that have been in accidents that obviously Winslow is investigating. I think that whole bit to the book was really, really well done in the end. And so that to me was really enjoyable. I think where we kind of stumble a little bit really is the connection between Winslow and Griffin. They do have chemistry and I appreciate that. I also really appreciated that right around page 100 or so when I last talked to you guys, I was complaining about, oh, I wish they'd be talking, you know, more closely, intimately, sharing more tidbits of their lives. They definitely did. It took me about a handful of pages to get to them, you know, talking very candidly with one another, and so that was really good. So we did get, you know, we did initiate good conversation, and I did like that there was never really a huge bout of miscommunication between them. I think the fights or misunderstandings that we do see between those two are very quickly resolved, and I like that, especially for the length of the book. I thought the book was longer. This book is 326 pages, which I think is at fault for a lot of the things that I personally didn't end up liking. There are many things that are mentioned and then we just simply jump to the next thing. We're jumping many hours in the span of one sentence to the next. And so I feel in terms of how the book flows, how it switches from one scene to the next, it doesn't do so very smoothly. And I find that for a lot of its really important moments, it at times doesn't give them enough importance and it wraps them up quite quickly. And even with the way that the book closes, it just kind of springs it up on you, and that happens several times throughout the book. And so just in terms of flow, I didn't necessarily love the way that it went, but it was still a fun read. It was an enjoyable one. I definitely do wish that we would have gotten to see Griffin and Winslow meet each other just a little bit better, because although the chemistry is there and we did see some good conversation, it didn't plague the book as much as their physical connection as well as the actual case. And even with the case, even though it is such a big thing that she's investigating this because people wouldn't otherwise think that it is, you know, a set of murders or that it is premeditated just because it's such a small town, nothing kind of happens up until you hit the last, I'd say 90 pages. Even though she does do her bouts of investigation here and there, it is a dead end after a dead end after a dead end. So it doesn't feel like we're making much progress on that end. And so there are things going for and against this book, but overall it was enjoyable. I'm glad I read this. I really want to read Juniper Hill. I have heard that out of the series, this is definitely not the strongest. I have heard that a lot of people's favorites is Juniper Hill. In fact, this was not recommended to me. Like, Indigo Ridge was not the book that people said, read this one. I just did this because I was curious about the origin story. People have recommended Juniper Hill to me, like, a lot. So I think that maybe that that one can do the trick for me. I think maybe that one can become a favorite. It's a single parent trope. There's like a huge mystery surrounding our main character and her background. The love interest, who is another one of the Eden brothers, is a chef. And so there are many things that I think going for it I could maybe really enjoy. We'll see when we get there, because definitely want to read that one as well. And that is it for today, friends. That is all that I have got for you in this reading romance books for a week. Honestly, this was a lot of fun. It's funny because I've always been the type of person to claim, oh, I couldn't read romance books back to back. But no, I really can. It's actually a lot of fun. I think maybe after the week I would get somewhat tired, but I see the appeal in reading this genre so often, because sometimes when you don't want to read about heavier topics, or you don't want to obviously dive deeper into a fantasy world and the world building and whatnot, this is exactly what the brain needs sometimes. And so I really enjoyed this little experiment. Let a girl know if you'd like to see another installment of this, but with a very specific genre. Maybe reading fantasy books for a week, maybe reading lit fic for a week. Let a girl know what you'd be interested in seeing in this specific format. It could even be reading a specific author for a week, or a specific trope for a week. Whatever you guys want to see, do let a girl know, because maybe your wish will be my command in that regard. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up down below if you did. Comment down below if you've read any of the books that I read in this video. Have you enjoyed them? Have you not? Let's also, for the sake of my sanity, leave in the comments your favorite romance book. Like, what is a romance book that if you could make me read, that would be the one? Like, Mel, please, for all that is good and well and holy and beautiful and stunning in this world, please read this book. Let a girl know in the comments what that would be, because I'm very curious to know. And if you reach the end of the book, let's leave some heart emojis, plain and simple. Any and all colors that you'd like, leave them in the comments if you reach the very end. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already for more content like this. I always say it, if you want to support the channel further, Patreon is always linked down below. It's massive help towards keeping things running smoothly and getting extra equipment when need be, books for specific videos. So if you ever want to support the channel further whilst getting loads of benefits back, you can check Patreon down in the description. I love you guys so much, and I will see you on the next one.